I spent 300 hours building this clock to prove one point. Government is inefficient. I don't think that anyone has ever built a clock like this. And yeah, it is pretty amazing, but we'll get to the clock in just a minute. The way that government works itself is interesting. We elect people who create laws and government infrastructure. Each department is intended to solve a problem that politicians think that their constituents are facing. To pay for this, taxes are collected from their constituents and distributed throughout government. The money doesn't necessarily go to solve the problems. It goes to bureaucrats planning how to spend the money, administrative staff helping support the bureaucrats, the politicians that decided to create the infrastructure, their employees, the administrative staff that help support those employees, and the buildings that they all work in. And each of the people in this chain have different incentives that don't necessarily align with the actual goal of the program. For instance, under President Biden's Inflation Reduction Act, there was a provision to lower drug prices. This is a good goal, but government price setting is the wrong solution. First, taxes are paid by both the people buying medicine and the people supplying medicine. This both raises the cost of the drugs and lowers the amount of money that people have to pay for the drugs. Second, the money is distributed in all of the places already mentioned, none of which actually do anything to lower the price of the drug in the long term. Then bureaucrats make decisions on what drugs they will choose and at what price. And what did they choose? Well, first, they chose cancer medications because that makes good headlines. Although it also crushes the future development of similar drugs, meaning fewer cancer drugs in the future for my kids. Then they chose weight loss drugs. Of course, it's a current medical trend, so it's going to get headlines. But according to the government's own projections, these drugs already face shortfalls for the foreseen future. And with price controls, those shortages will assuredly continue even longer. The end result might mean lower prices today, but it also means less access today and tomorrow and poorer suppliers and buyers. So back to the clock. First, our time is traced out on the gantry system, and to do this, 3 stepper motors are used and connected to 3 G2 timing belts.
6.5 hours later.
We also tell the PCB to turn on an LED at certain times.
1 eternity later.
It is glorious. It is complicated. It is everything that I imagined it would be. However, it can also only tell the time every 5 minutes. It also has to be horizontal because it isn't robust enough to stand upright. In other words, it is just pretty. It's something to be admired, but it is barely functioning. In fact, if I just wanted the time, I could just take the time directly from the computer, which is actually how the whole process starts. This clock is the perfect analog for government. The clock is a really cool idea. The government agencies were created for cool reasons. Government agencies were started for moral reasons, and like with drug prices, they are tasked with doing moral things. The clock looks like it functions, and government bureaucrats show up to work every day, making it look like they function. And the housing for the clock, it's pretty, and bureaucrats all work in grand buildings in Washington, D.C. The problem is that, like healthcare, if people were just allowed to hold on to more of their money, they might be able to actually shop for medications. When that happens, drug prices fall dramatically, like getting the time directly from the computer. If the government just got out of the way, doctors like Josh Umber of Atlas MD could provide cheaper medications. Or companies like Mark Cuban's would have more customers. Instead, we have an overcomplicated system that is attempting to implement overcomplicated policies, and the incentives of the people implementing these policies don't align with the people that wrote the law. Like the clock, government is pretty, but it is dumb.